Controversy over the labelling of a health product. Bashar al-Assad promises to come clean on chemical weapons. And 4 men sentenced to death in India gang rape case.
Good evening. Customs officers are investigating a case involving the labeling of a herbal turtle jelly product. Authorities are trying to find out if the company involved breached the amended Trade Descriptions Ordinance. Rani Samtani has more details.
Customs officers are investigating an herbal chain store over allegations that its herbal turtle jelly product doesn't contain a key ingredient, turtle shell collagen, as labeled. Customs Chief Clement Chung said they have contacted the manufacturer to obtain more information and samples for testing. And because the medicinal item is very popular in Hong Kong, Chung says the department has made it a high priority to investigate if the product breaches the Trade Descriptions Ordinance. The company in question, Hoi Tin Tong, today expressed regret for the public concern sparked by the case. And it denies any wrongdoing. Customs officers have been cracking down on businesses that violate the new consumer protection regulations. But Chung believes some businesses are making an effort to change the way they promote and sell products and services.
In some of the travel agents and some of the airlines, they used to omit the fuel surcharge, they used to omit airport tax, but now they have the whole thing embodied in the price tag. I have funny things in the beauty salons, like permanent epilation. Now it's not permanent anymore. They tell you exactly how long it's expected to last.
The department has received hundreds of complaints and more than 3,000 inquiries since the amendment came into effect in July. Legal experts advise traders to train their staff so they understand how the amended ordinance may apply to their businesses. Meanwhile, Customs have agreed to keep refining the enforcement guidelines and to give more examples of cases that constitute a criminal offense. Rani Samtani, TVB News.
A High Court judge has rejected a bid by the government to seek a retrial of an Apple Daily photographer for assault. The judge criticised the Department of Justice for nitpicking.
Gary Singh had been charged with assault after a confrontation with a security guard at the central government offices in January last year while he was trying to photograph a government minister. An Eastern Court magistrate found Singh not guilty in December, saying he could not rule out the possibility that Singh had acted in self-defense, as the guard could be seen rushing towards him in security camera footage. In filing the appeal last month, the Department of Justice argued that the magistrate had misinterpreted the security guard's testimony, which led to a flawed verdict. But Court of First Instance Judge Maggie Poon upheld the original verdict in a written judgment handed down today, defending the magistrate's assessment of the witness that his testimony was unreliable. Poon also rejected claims by the prosecution that the magistrate had reached his conclusion based on speculation not backed by evidence, saying that he had relied on facts based on video evidence. The judge went on to criticize government prosecutors for nitpicking and overreaching as it tried to push for justice. The Department of Justice said it is now studying the judgment to decide what to do next. Singh said today the case may have been politically motivated, as authorities spent nearly 2 years trying to nail him over what he describes as a relatively trivial case. The sentiment was echoed in a joint statement released by the Hong Kong Journalists Association and Press Photographers Association, which welcomed today's ruling. It also said that the root of the problem, poor press arrangements at the government offices, was not yet resolved, and called on the government to stop restricting press freedom.
Former Director of Public Prosecutions Kevin Zervos has been appointed a judge of the Court of First Instance. Zervos, who earlier retired from the Department of Justice, will take up his new post next Monday. He became Director of Public Prosecutions in 2011. Because of his prior position, Zervos will not be dealing with any cases that involve the government in his first 6 months as a judge.
One member of the LegCo Public Accounts Committee says there could be discrepancies between the findings of an investigation into former ICAC Commissioner Timothy Tong and what he said while being grilled by legislators. Tong may now have to be summoned to more public hearings over lavish hospitality spending. Jean de Silva reports.
Fallout today from a report released yesterday about the lavish hospitality spending by former ICAC chief Timothy Tong. The report said Tong breached regulations on dozens of occasions. But that's not all. The vice chairman of LegCo's Public Accounts Committee, which is conducting its own investigation, thinks there may have been discrepancies between the conclusions in the report and Tong's statements at the committee hearings.
Certainly, according to the report, there have been a number of areas where there are contradictions between the evidence given by Mr. Timothy Tong during the hearing of the PAC and as compared with, obviously, the sort of findings of the independent committee.
But Public Accounts Committee Chairman Abraham Sheikh thinks it's too early to say whether there indeed were any discrepancies. He admits, however, that the committee will have to follow up on the case.
So we have to go through the whole process and see that whether that situation arises. If it arises, there is a need for further clarification. We can either do it through correspondence. And if we further see that there would be a need for a public hearing or two public hearings to follow up with the information, or there is any discrepancy to those information, we would do it.
The Democratic Party warned Tong could face serious consequences if he is found to have lied to legislators and violated LegCo's powers and privileges ordinance.
Any person give a false answer or any question material to the subject of inquiry, may have committed an offense of false evidence and deception, which is a perjury offense.
Besides being the target of Independent Review Committee and Public Accounts Committee probes, Timothy Tong is also being investigated by the anti-graft agency he used to lead. João da Silva, TVB News.
Overseas now, in Syrian President Bashar al-Assad has agreed publicly to a Russian plan to hand over his country's chemical weapons to the international community. But he said the proposal will only work if the U.S. stops its military threats. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry maintained a tough stance, keeping alive the threat of military action if the process takes too long. Alan Booknear reports.
Speaking on Russian television, Assad credited the Russian initiative for his agreement to turn over his chemical weapons, not American threats. Syria's ambassador to the United Nations said he officially presented the UN with an instrument of accession to the Chemical Weapons Convention, a treaty banning chemical weapons.
With this, the chapter of the so-called chemical weapons should be ended, and legally speaking, Syria has become, starting today, a full member of the convention.
But under UN procedure, Syria will only become a member after 30 days, and the instrument of accession is still being studied. The UN is also still studying evidence gathered of a deadly suspected gas attack near Damascus last month that the U.S. blames on the Syrian government.
We don't want to see any hastily move, any partial report, any politicized report, any manipulated report. All what we are asking for is to see the team fulfilling fully its mandate.
Assad said Syria will begin turning its chemical weapons over after the 30-day waiting period to join the Chemical Weapons Convention. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry, in Geneva meeting with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov to discuss the Russian proposal, maintained a tough stance.
This is not a game, and I said that to my friend Sergei when we talked about it initially. It has to be real. It has to be comprehensive. It has to be verifiable. It has to be credible. It has to be timely and implemented in a timely fashion.
Lavrov emphasized that there has to be a move away from military confrontation. Alan Bookniet, TVB News.
President Xi Jinping has attended the 13th Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit, which opened in Kyrgyzstan today. Regional issues, as well as the Syrian conflict, were discussed. Leaders of member states are today signing a joint declaration and ratifying a series of documents. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization was founded more than a decade ago and is aimed at promoting cooperation within the group. It consists of China, Russia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan. Afghanistan, India, Iran, Mongolia, and Pakistan serve as observers, while Belarus, Sri Lanka, and Turkey are dialogue partners.
In Taiwan, a legal victory for Legislative Yuan Speaker Wang Jinping in his challenge against a decision by the ruling Kuomintang to expel him. A court in Taipei today granted an injunction sought by Wang against the expulsion. The ruling means Wang will also stay on as parliamentary speaker, at least for now. The KMT is expected to appeal against today's judgment. The party expelled Wang earlier this week for allegedly pressuring prosecutors not to appeal the acquittal of an opposition lawmaker in a breach of trust case.
At least 3 people were killed in a U.S. consulate in western Afghanistan when insurgents detonated a truck bomb outside the front gates. The bombing was followed by a gun battle between security forces and the insurgents. 2 police officers and a security guard were killed in the attack in the city of Herat. A spokesman for the consulate says all U.S. personnel were safe and accounted for. The attack, claimed by the Taliban, underscores the worrying security picture as Afghan forces prepare to take over from foreign combat troops.
A judge in India today sentenced to death 4 men convicted in the deadly gang rape of a young woman last December. The brutal rape on a moving bus left the young woman with such severe internal injuries that she died 2 weeks later. The case was closely watched across India, seen as a reflection of the rampant mistreatment of women and the government's inability to deal with crime. It sparked widespread outrage and moved the Indian government to toughen up its rape laws. As with all death sentences in India, the judge's order has to be confirmed by the country's High Court.
When we come back, a look at the new North Lantau Hospital. Stock market buzz as Twitter seeks IPO. And the Kiwis sailing toward America's Cup glory.
Welcome back. A newly built community hospital on Lantau will open its doors later this month. But as Vicky Kong reports, it'll be a while before full services are available.
The North Lantau Hospital in Tongcheng is aimed at serving the needs of residents of the island. But it says it needs 650 staff if it wants to provide round-the-clock accident and emergency services, as well as clinical consultations and accommodation for patients. For now, the hospital authority has recruited only about 200 employees, including more than a dozen doctors and 60 to 70 nurses. And general wards are yet to be fully furnished.
In full service, we'll have 160 inpatient beds in both acute care and extended care. And we will also have some day beds and also some day rehabilitation places to cater for not just inpatients, but patients receiving, day care in this hospital.
When the hospital opens on September 24th, it will offer 8 hours of accident and emergency services each day. That will be extended to 16 hours a day by the beginning of next year. And when A&E services are not available, patients would be redirected to other hospitals, such as Princess Margaret Hospital. The last hospital the government built was that in Chengquan-o 14 years ago. Authorities expect this new hospital to start providing 24/7 accident and emergency services from mid-2014. Vicky Kong, TVB News.
The Democratic Party has voiced opposition to the possible conversion of country parkland for residential use. As Stephanie Choi reports, the government is still trying to come up with ways to boost land supply.
The Housing Authority announced today a Yunlong plot that's currently used for interim housing would be converted to building publicly run flats instead. It could provide 2,000 to 3,000 units. Meanwhile, debate rages on suggestions to build homes in country parks. Wu Chi-wai of the Democratic Party today voiced opposition to the idea.
Once you have that kind of thinking, that will be a cancer.
The Democratic Party believes that the government should exhaust all possibilities before setting their sights on country parks. Aside from the fact that country parks should be reserved for public leisure, the party said that there are other considerations.
The country park is located at the hillside, and you will encounter, very, very difficult, engineering problems.
Wu pointed out alternative sites such as South Kam Tin and Tai Tong. By acting according to the Land Resumption Ordinance, the government would be able to balance the interests of both property developers and the 470,000 households waiting for accommodation. Stephanie Choi, TVB News.
On to some business news now. Twitter has announced it's filed for an initial public offering in the US. But under federal legislation designed to help companies with less than $1 billion in revenue, its IPO documents will remain confidential for a few weeks. Twitter has 200 million users. The streams of 140-character messages have become an indispensable tool for celebrities, corporations and governments seeking to communicate with the public. Twitter announced its decision to go public with a tweet.
Britain's Prince William has officially finished his military tour of duty to focus on royal duties and charity work. As Sonia Artero reports, the Prince wasted no time as he and Duchess of Cambridge got busy raising awareness at a conservation awards ceremony in London.
Perilous missions of piloting a Royal Air Force helicopter are over for Prince William. Completing 156 search and rescue operations and 1,300 hours of flying brings to an official close the military phase of William's royal duties. The prince will now focus his attention on conservation, particularly in the wildlife protection of endangered species, which he has a real passion for.
For me, it's a sense of freedom. Being out in the middle of nowhere in Africa, just seeing the beauty of nature and the natural world is just phenomenal.
William has teamed up with sports stars David Beckham and Yao Ming to broadcast public service announcements designed to prevent the slaughter of rhinos for their horns and ivory. Witnessing the majesty of animals during his first tour of Africa is what inspired the prince to stand up for their protection.
But I never realized how much emotionally and sort of mentally it would affect me.
A need to protect the vulnerable intensified with the birth of his son, Prince George, which is why this charity holds such deep meaning for the Duke of Cambridge.
Suddenly, as a parent now, he's wondering about what's the heritage that we are leaving, the next generation.
While presenting awards at last night's Tusk Conservation Awards ceremony in London, William joked about it being their first night away from the baby.
Please excuse us if you see us nervously casting cheeky glances at our mobile phones to check all is well back home.
A spokesperson for the prince confirms he is considering a future role in public service and will not venture into full-time royal duties just yet. Sonia Artero, TVB News.
Deadly floods have overwhelmed the U.S. state of Colorado, where the death toll now stands at 3. Thousands of people have been evacuated, and the National Guard was called in to help with rescue efforts. The worst of the damage was in Boulder, where flash floods washed away homes, cars, roads and bridges. Dive teams were called in to perform rescues. President Barack Obama signed an emergency declaration to step up disaster relief efforts. Record rains have caused 12 dams to overflow, triggering several mudslides. One person was killed when a structure collapsed. Another man drowned in floodwaters, and a woman was swept away in a vehicle. Forecasters say it's not over yet. The heavy rains are expected to continue. All right, Chris, over to you for sports.
Happy if you're from New Zealand, right? Emirates New Zealand continues to dominate the America's Cup, taking 2 more races on Thursday. As Jameson Wong tells us, Oracle USA needs a miracle to retain the cup.
Not even the great Ben Ainslie could turn things around for the Americans. They brought in the British sailing great against New Zealand for races 6 and 7. Oracle had only won 1 of the first 5 races.
Let's get it going, Kong, and come low.
And the New Zealanders took race 6 by 47 seconds and dominated race 7 by finishing more than a minute over the cup holders.
That's there. Stay for the 3.
The Kiwis extended their points total to 6 and could clinch the title this weekend. The Americans were penalized 2 points before the finals because of cheating.
I think the question is, imagine if these guys lost from here. What an upset that would be. I mean, they've almost got it in the bag. So that's my motivation.
The 34th America's Cup has been filled with excitement with the high-tech 72-foot catamarans reaching speeds of more than 40 knots and aggressive racing tactics resulting in a few near collisions. Racing resumes on Saturday. Jameson Wong, TVB News.
To golf, and American Brandt Snedeker fired an opening round 8 under 63 to lead the penultimate playoff event outside Chicago. He had 7 straight birdies on his card and leads fellow American Zach Johnson by 1 stroke. Tiger Woods is 3 shots back, while Phil Mickelson is 7 behind Snedeker. The 30 golfers with the most points advance to next week's tour finale.
And finally, a man using hundreds of helium-filled balloons lifted off in the U.S. state of Maine yesterday with the hope of crossing the Atlantic Ocean. About 150 volunteers assisted Jonathan Trappe in filling more than 300 helium balloons. Wishing him well on his journey was Joe Kittinger, who was the first solo balloonist to cross the Atlantic in 1984. Trappe hopes to be the first person to do it using a cluster balloon system. For his transatlantic crossing, the basket he's riding in is actually a lifeboat that could be used if he ditches in the ocean. If all goes according to plan, the feat could take 3 to 6 days. But if wind currents blow the wrong way, he could wind up in northern Africa or Norway. And that's the news for tonight.
Good night.
Good evening. The weather today was mainly cloudy with sunny periods. And as tonight's situation chart shows, showers and cloud bands associated with a broad area of low pressure are affecting the coastal areas of Guangdong and the northern part of the South China Sea. Today's temperatures ranged from 26.9 to 30.7 degrees, and the relative humidity was between 72 to 85%. Moderate east to northeasterly winds. The current temperature is now 27 degrees Celsius with the relative humidity standing at 88%. 0.1 millimeters of rainfall has been recorded since midnight. So Freddie, how's the weather tomorrow? It will be mainly cloudy with a few showers tonight. There will be sunny periods tomorrow. Temperatures will range between 27 and 31 degrees. There will be sunny periods and a few showers on Sunday. Tomorrow's API is forecast at 15 to 70, and the pollution level will range from low to high. And the maximum UV index forecast for tomorrow will be about 10. And here's the latest global weather update. Showers in Shanghai, Taipei, and Xiamen. Thunderstorms in Guangzhou, bright in Macau, cloudy in Chengdu. Sunny in Beijing, rain in Seoul, cloudy in Tokyo. Thunderstorms in Bangkok, rain in Ho Chi Minh City and Manila. Showers in Kuala Lumpur, thunderstorms in Singapore, showers in Jakarta. Sunny in New Delhi and Karachi. Sunny in Cairo. Thunderstorms in Brisbane, showers in Sydney and Melbourne. Sunny in Toronto. Sunny in Vancouver, bright in San Francisco, sunny in Los Angeles. Showers in London and Paris, sunny in Zurich. And that's the weather. Have a lovely evening.